It's been a shaky last couple turns through the Mariners rotation, but Brian Wu and Bryce Miller have picked up the slack on the back end. We'll talk about Miller's great start last night against the Rays. More coming up here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Tuesday, August 27th, 2024. This is Ty Gonzalez and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Mariners beat the Rays 5-1 last night, and more importantly, picked up a game on the Astros. We'll talk about the big nights for Bryce Miller and Randy Arozarena, as well as an unfortunate injury update on one of the Mariners prospects, which could also be relevant to their current opponent. But before we do that, shout out to our title sponsor today, Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB. It's LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. And if you want to hear from me and Colby even more and help support the show, check out our Patreon. The link is in the description. You can sign up for free 7-day trial. So Bryce Miller, the only guy that could figure him out in the Rays lineup last night was Josh Lowe. Had a single, had a solo home run. Outside of that, the Rays couldn't do anything against Bryce Miller, who goes 7 strong, just the 1 earned run on the Lowe home run. The 2 hits allowed, too low. Of course, 10 strikeouts, that ties a career high. No walks on 91 pitches, just 5 hard hit balls on the night. Across the board for the Rays, not just against Miller, but also against Voth, Thornton. Neither of those guys gave up a hard hit ball last night. So a really good night as a whole for the Mariners pitching staff, but of course, Miller headlining that effort. What did you think about him last night?
Yeah, Bryce is somehow flying under the radar, not only for the entire year, but also for the last couple months, and particularly this month because Brian Wu has just been arguably the best pitcher in the American League. We talked about this yesterday in the mailbag. He's got a shot to win pitcher of the month. But Miller has been very good this month. He's been very good since July 1. When you look at the numbers, he's been one of the better pitchers in baseball. His last outing against the Dodgers didn't go great. Wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great. Really, the pitch count got away from him. He couldn't put hitters away. But last night, we saw just fantastic. Bryce Miller, probably the best we've seen him. I think it's right up there with his first start of his career against the A's, like just in terms of pure dominance. You look at the numbers overall right now, got the base on ball per 9 under 2 finally. Which is, again, insane. Ks per 9 are actually up a little bit this year. 3.23 ERA on the season, 3.60 FIP, xFIP, sorry. And you just kind of look at it, by the way, he will, with his next out, he will set a new career high in innings pitched. He's been cruising. They haven't had to skip him. He's been extremely durable here in his young career. And last night we just saw a lot of really good things and kind of an interesting development from Bryce last night. He was obviously sensational, and it's very common, very practical Bryce Miller start here. A lot of fastballs. We know that's his MO. Had a 30% whiff rate on the four-seamer, which is very good. You guys, that's where you enter like elite whiff rate on a four-seamer. In the splitter, he threw a couple of absolutely filthy ones to get a couple strikeouts in the first inning. If you remember those were absolutely filthy. And the splitter has emerged as a legitimate weapon. It's a legitimate pitch, right? Something that is major league quality. That question has been answered. It is a legitimate offering for him. But what we saw last night, which I was really interested in, was the knuckle curveball. He only threw 9 of them last night, but he got 4 whiffs on 6 swings. That is a 67% whiff rate on the knuckle curve. And that's kind of the missing piece right now for Bryce Miller to take that next step to kind of go from, mid rotation to maybe upper mid rotation, or maybe even like a number 1 type if he has a breaking ball. Now he has a slider, he has a sweeper. We know that he can throw good breaking balls. It's just there's not a lot of consistency there. So right now it's mostly 4-seamer splitter. That's kind of what he moves back and forth from. Throws the 2-seamer, the sinker a little bit. It's not really a swing and miss pitch. It's okay, but the 4-seamer and the splitter are his 2 best pitches. If he can carry over the knuckle curve we saw last night, if he can throw that pitch consistently, get strikes with it, get whiffs.
Gets whiffs.
Thank you. Gets whiffs with it. If he can do that, then
Saying what way?
Yeah. If he can do that, then he's, a legit top level number 3 starter, maybe even a low end 2.
Yeah.
Right now, he is kind of the de facto number 5 for the Mariners just because of, how Wu is throwing the ball, but he is simply incredible. When you look at his numbers overall right now, that's a number 3 starter in the big leagues. It's durable. He gives you innings. He enough whiffs. He doesn't walk anybody. He's on track to have his second consecutive year with a sub 2 base on ball per 9. Bryce Miller has really taken big steps forward this year, and it's kind of gone almost unnoticed just because of how good Brian Wu has been in his 80 innings. And obviously we know, how when they're on, how insane the combination of Gilbert, Kirby, and Castillo is. So Miller kind of the man in this rotation, but he's been consistent. He's probably been the most consistent guy in this rotation all year. He's been durable as all heck. He hasn't missed a start in his career so far. He throws a ton of strikes just like everybody else. And now we're starting to see the swing and miss pitch kind of start to arrive. He can get whiffs on the four-seamer. He can get whiffs on the split. He can get whiffs on one of the breaking balls. Right now, I think the knuckle-curve is his best shot. All of a sudden, it's not like a big 3, and then it's like a big 4, maybe even a big 5. And Miller, again, fun little bonus note here. You get him for 5 more seasons after this one. Right. 5 full seasons after this. So, Bryce Miller, again, continues to be underrated, continues to be undervalued, but dude's good. And he is a mid-rotation starter right now, and there's still a little bit more to go get.
Right. And, you're starting to see him become more comfortable in using pitches that are not fastballs, right? It was still a fastball dominant outing last night. It was still 62 fastballs out of the 91 pitches that he threw between the four seam and the sinker / two seam. But, 28, 29 non-fastballs as well. And again, that knuckle curve, the splitter being actual weapons, that's a really huge development. Now, we're starting to see the maturation of Bryce Miller into a complete pitcher. He's not there yet, but he's getting there, and we're starting to see the actual proof of concept. So that's really exciting because, again, that guy is your number 4, right? And we've talked about all the great things that Brian Wu is doing right now, and that's your number 5, right? Those guys, they're probably number 2s, number 3s, hell, even number 1s in a couple of rotations. This is a pretty rare. I mean, this is what makes the Mariners rotation special, right? They don't have a Garrett Cole at the top of their rotation, but they have 5 legit dudes throughout their rotation. The depth within the rotation is what separates them from basically everyone else's rotation.
Right. They don't have they don't have one Garrett Cole, but they have 5 guys who on any given night can go toe to toe with Garrett Cole.
Right.
And that is something that I can't think of any other rotation that can boast that right now. Maybe Philly when they're healthy, but they're not. So it really is something special. And again, Miller just overlooked this year. Miller and Wu combined, they really needed to step up this month because Kirby has been bad. Luis Castillo has been hit or miss. I mean, the stuff is really good, but the command and kind of leaving stuff over the middle of the plate, he's given up some home runs. And that's kind of been an issue for Castillo this month. Gilbert, not exactly Cy Young form Gilbert, but still pretty good Logan Gilbert. So you needed Wu and Miller to step up this month because you weren't getting it from a couple of your big 3 guys. And boy, have they. It's been exactly what you need. And trying to think of this offense without this elite starting rotation. Ooh, boy.
Yeah.
We're probably talking about hey, what are their odds of the number 1 pick winning the number 1 pick in the lottery right now? So the rotation's been great. And by the way, the last couple nights, obviously Kirby notwithstanding, in his last outing, they've gone 7. They've gone deep in these games, and they've given Dan Wilson really easy, decisions to make in the back end of these games where he just has to use 2 guys. So, and last night he didn't have to use Munoz or Snyder after they both threw a lot of pitches on Sunday. So that's great. It worked out great. Miller, obviously the star of this game, but it's about time he gets a lot more credit for his success that he's had so far than he usually gets. He's just been somewhat boringly great for most of this season. And it's about time he gets some recognition for it.
So Miller, the star of the game on the pitching front, at least, and probably just overall for the game. But let's talk about the offensive star of the game for the Mariners. That was Randy Arozarena going up against his former team, the Tampa Bay Rays, for the first time since being traded at the deadline. Go over that in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by eBay Motors and PrizePicks. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into an MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Again, that is ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply, eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000. Think Tyreek Hill will get more than 90.5 yards in week 1, or that Caleb Williams will throw for fewer than 236.5 yards in his debut? Cook up hot takes with your friends and win real money this football season when you and your crew run your game on PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. That's promo code LOCKEDONMLB on PrizePicks for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, run your game. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. You can catch all the action between the Mariners and the Rays tonight on the Mariners hometown broadcast with SiriusXM via the SXM app. All you have to do to find that is search the word Mariners. Day game tomorrow, folks. So we'll be doing a post-game show after that one, moving CTZ episode 216 to Thursday for all of you that are subscribed to the Patreon. All right, so I'm wearing his jersey for a reason today because Randy Arozarena had himself quite a game last night. Hit a 3-run home run off of Ryan Pepio. His first home run at T-Mobile Park, second home run in a Mariners uniform, just smacked it out to right field. After a wild series of events, a Jose Caballero error that kept the inning alive on a weak ground ball from Julio, who actually hit it to the left side of the infield for once. And it worked out. It did work out.
We'll ignore the at-bat where he was ahead 2-0, then chased a slider a foot off the plate, only to get a fastball middle in and pop it up to right field.
Yeah, Julio's not in a great spot right now. We'll probably talk about that at some point in the future. So, and then Cal Raleigh hits a little dribbler down the third base line. And the BABIP gods actually shined upon the Mariners for once. And the ball hits the bag for an infield single for Cal. And then Randy follows that up with the 3-run bomb to essentially put this game out of reach and put the nail in the Rays coffin. So, Randy also got hit by a pitch. And as we've seen over the many times that he's unfortunately been hit by a pitch, wasn't happy about it. He's been hit by 5 pitches in the last 5 games, I believe, was the stat they threw up on the broadcast last night. So new Ty France just dropped, apparently. The spirit of Ty France has entered the body of Randy Arozarena.
Must explain the 1-for-29 streak he was on the road trip.
Yeah, truly the spirit of Ty France has taken over Randy Arozarena. All right, so it's been kind of a streaky time for Randy since coming over to the Mariners. How are you feeling about him right now after last night's game?
Fine. His first couple weeks here were really good. And then he went on the road trip and he, like pretty much everybody on the club, sucked. But we did start to see some things in that Dodgers series where he squared up 3 or 4 balls in one game and he had nothing to show for it. He was an over. Then he was, we saw the double against the Giants. We saw some good things from Randy in the Giants series. And then last night, pretty impressive home run in 95, 96 on the outside corner. And he just drove it into the right field stands for a right-handed hitter. Not the easiest thing to do. But it was a really nice piece of hitting there. And, he still managed to get on base enough, even when he's struggling, to help them. Now, a lot of that is the hit by pitch, which we would say isn't a skill, but then again, there's Ty France doing it every year. So maybe, but yeah, no, he's been pretty good. He made the great diving catch against the Giants the other day. So played center field on Sunday and didn't mess anything up. So elite glove, Randy Arozarena, clearly. That's a thing. So yeah, overall, I still feel really good about Randy and how he's, going to perform for Seattle. I still think overall his production since coming over has been great. I think it was Kramer maybe had a really good stat that he threw on Twitter last night that I don't have in front of me, but essentially when Randy Arozarena has a good night at the plate, the Mariners win. When Arozarena has a bad night at the plate, they lose. Like it's basically a foregone conclusion. So Randy is that important to this club, especially when Julio is just absolutely lost right now. There's really no nice way to say it. So I feel really good about Randy. I do feel like he's a guy who can kind of like bring the vibes with him and kind of like create energy when it's stale, kind of like Eugenio was able to do a few times.
Sure.
So I still feel really good about Randy overall. Was he going to maintain his June and July the entire duration of the season? No, probably not. He was probably going to go through a stretch like he did, but now hopefully he's coming out of it. And here's the stat from Kramer. In wins, Randy Arozarena is hitting 302, 455, 442. In losses, it's 146, 305, 271. So pretty important player for the Mariners, not only this year, but going forward, for 2 years after this. Hopefully he is settling into, new ballpark, new city, new organization. There's a lot of things that happen that you have to deal with when you're traded mid-season, and it can take some time to adjust. So hopefully he's starting to adjust to those things. And we can, first home run at T-Mobile Park. So hopefully we'll see more of that down the stretch. But I still feel really good about Randy, and I think he's going to end up working out very nicely here.
Right, and we know that leaving Tampa was hard on him. Obviously, he spent the next day sitting in the stands for their game against whoever it was at the time, and then he spent quite a bit of time in the Rays clubhouse yesterday before the game. I kind of wonder if maybe this can serve as like a closing of a chapter for him, this series. It can serve as some closure for him, and then he can move on and just really enter the next stage of his career following this series. Now, we actually have some time here, so let's talk about Julio real quick. Julio, to me, watching him right now, I don't know if you've noticed this, but he's basically smack dab in the middle of the batter's box. He's really backed off of the plate over the last few days. And to me, again, not a swing guy, right? So I might be off on this. But to me, it looks with that ankle, he's not really pushing off of his back leg at all. He's not, like, it was already an issue before the injury. Like, we started to see him fix it and adjust a bit more, but he's not pulling the ball at all right now. Again, like, he technically pulled the ball last night on the error to Caballero, but it was, he just put the ball in the dirt and Caballero couldn't make the play. But other than that, it's just a lot of balls being hit to right field and right center field. Mm-hmm. So you noticing the same thing? Because, like, to me, it seems like it's directly correlated with the ankle sprain.
I don't know if it is or if it isn't, related to the ankle. But what I will say is that after Julio had started to have a really good July prior to the injury, where he was pulling the ball with authority, he came back and he was still doing it a little bit in his early days back from the injury. Although, the big double he had in Detroit was to right center field. It looks a lot like he did in April, where it's, fastball in the inner third and I'm popping it up to the right side. I'm inside out swing, and that's not a good thing. Like, that is not something that is going to lead to a lot of success. Can Julio hit the ball hard the other way? Sure. He has to hit the appropriate pitches hard the other way, though, because right now what I'm seeing is this is a guy who still doesn't or knows he can't cover the inner third of the plate against any velocity. So he's cheating a little bit, and he's still late. He's still behind, and it's leaving him susceptible to stuff on the outside corner, namely breaking balls, because he's trying to cover that hard pitch in. So, I look at this and I say, this looks like the Julio we saw in April. This looks like the Julio we saw in May, where he'll still collect enough hits, going the other way that you're like, okay, well, he's contributing a little bit, but you need Julio to pull the baseball. He needs to hit home runs. Like, this slap hitting Julio is not going to fly, particularly when he's obviously limited in what he can do in the field and on the bases. So when I watch Julio right now, it's just painful to watch, because everybody on earth, including Julio, knows how he's going to be pitched. There is no secret, and he still can't do anything with it. He's still not making the adjustment, either because, I don't know, he's mentally not willing to, or he physically can't now. But it just looks a lot like it did in April and May, and that's just not going to fly. And this idea that Julio needs to be a gap-to-gap hitter, he doesn't. Like, Julio needs to hit home runs, and that means he needs to pull the ball. He needs to take 93, 94 on the inner third, thigh high. He needs to hit that ball for a double down the left field line. He can't fly that ball out to right field. I don't care if it goes to the warning track in right field. Yeah, of course it did. It was an inside-out swing. He doesn't have as much power to his weak side. He's got to pull the ball. So, it's just incredibly frustrating to watch Julio right now. Again, I don't think this is a matter of Julio's just can't believe that people are pitching him this way, or I don't think this is a matter of the Mariners can't seem to figure out, how the league is pitching to Julio. I don't think this is like, well, Edgar can't do anything about this. Like, everybody knows it is on Julio to make the adjustment that he knows he needs to make. And right now, he's not doing it. And my guess would be is because there's something physically limiting him from doing that, because he did start to do it before he got hurt. He was starting to make those changes, and we were seeing the results. So, it's unfortunate that he's back to what he was early in the year, but yeah, that very well could just be because the ankle, and he's trying to protect that as much as he can so he could play every day. But yeah, it's not been good. It's not been fun to watch over the last couple days. And it's really hard to imagine you actually getting back in this race. This is the version of Julio you're going to see for the next 5 weeks.
All right, so we got some house cleaning things to go over. We got an unfortunate injury update on a Mariners prospect. We have a guy that was DFA'd by a division rival, a former Mariner, who Colby wants to talk about. We'll go over that in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by Liquid IV and Game Time. I think most of us can agree that there is nothing better than enjoying an ice cold beverage on a hot summer day at the ballpark. So when you're taking in America's pastime, don't forget to hydrate with Liquid IV's Popsicle Firecracker flavor, a surefire summer hit. Get hydrated with electrolytes, essential vitamins, and clinically tested nutrients from the #1 powdered hydration brand in America. Because baseball and summer go together like Liquid IV and indulgent hydration. Tear, pour, live more. One stick plus 16 ounces of water hydrates better than water alone. No more thirsty summers when you indulge in hydration with Liquid IV. Get 20% off your first order of Liquid IV when you go to liquidiv.com and use the promo code MLB at checkout. That's 20% off your first order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code MLB at liquidiv.com. So some of you may not know this, but I used to live in New Mexico, and down in New Mexico, there are 0 pro sports teams, and a lot of the bands and artists that I listen to skip going there more often than not. So when I moved to Toronto, where there's a baseball team, a basketball team, a hockey team, even a soccer team, and there's great music being played every night in the city, yeah, I was right in my element. And when I want to catch a ball game, or my wife and I want to see a band, I always get our tickets through Game Time. And that was the case well before Game Time sponsored our network and before I even joined the network, because it is truly the best ticketing service hands down. I really, really believe that. And now it's getting even better thanks to Game Time Picks. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I can just go on the app, it'll show me the best deal right away, it'll show me the exact view I'll have, and most importantly, it'll tell me exactly what I'm going to pay with Game Time's all-in pricing, so there are no annoying little fees that pop up at the very last second. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Once again, you can catch all the action between the Mariners and the Rays tonight on the Mariners hometown broadcast with SiriusXM via the SXM app. All you have to do to find that is search the word Mariners. So Mariners pitching prospect Teddy McGraw, who cracked our top 20 Mariners prospects when we just did our prospect re-rank. If you haven't watched that already, go ahead and do so. It's on our channel. It's on all the podcast platforms. He had just worked his way back. This is a guy that has had Tommy John surgery in the past. He more recently had a brace put in his elbow. That put him out for a while. He just made his way back from that. But now he is feeling tightness in his arm and is going to visit Dr. Keith Meister, who I believe is also the doctor that Matt Brash consulted with when he was dealing with his arm issues earlier this year. So not great news for Teddy McGraw. And this is also potentially relevant to the team the Mariners are playing right now, the Tampa Bay Rays, because it was reported, or at least speculated, that Teddy McGraw was one of the guys the Rays are considering for the player to be named later in the Randy Arozarena deal. All indications seem to be that it's essentially between McGraw and Walter Ford. So for McGraw, obviously don't want to speculate here, but this is obviously not good news, especially because it's so quick after his return to the mound. You have any thoughts on Teddy McGraw, Colby?
You hope that this is, precaution, and maybe it's just, hey, let's shut him down for the year. Let's get him back. But his development has been greatly hampered already. If he has to have another surgery, that's going to set him back another year and a half. It's highly unlikely that he will ever throw a pitch for the Mariners, or honestly, probably anybody, if this is a third Tommy John related surgery. So we'll have to wait and see, what the doctor says. But if it's full blown surgery again, then I think it's time to just kind of move on from the idea that Teddy McGraw is going to be anything valuable in the big leagues. And if he can resume, his career, and he does make it to the big leagues someday, fantastic. It'll be an awesome story. But just realistically speaking, if we're talking about another brace or another Tommy John surgery, it's time to cut your losses there, and we'll have to move on from him in our prospect discussions. But that would be a real bummer, because healthy, there is a lot to like about Teddy McGraw, but if you're not available, you're not very useful.
So switching things up here, the Mariners will be on Apple TV on Friday against the Angels. So no Roots Sports broadcast for those of you that are going to be watching the game, that are planning on watching the game on Friday. And then this came across Twitter about an hour or so ago. The A's have designated old friend Abraham Toro for assignment. Colby, you want to bring him back?
Only a fool wouldn't. So I'm not.
I mean, he does have one of the
sure.
greatest home runs in Mariners history.
Certainly regular season edition. They probably goes Toro, Cal,
right,
and then any Griffey home run.
Right.
So yeah, Ichiro walking off, Mariano. Toro, sure, why not? 27 years old. He got off to a great start this year. Obviously, he's really struggled recently. Still hitting left-handed pitching okay. He plays third. He can play some second. He's played some first this year as well, even has a game in left field. So there's some versatility there. There's some on-base skills there. So sure, why not? I mean, you are going to have another roster spot available to you in the next 4 or 5 days. So, we'll see. I'm certainly open to it. Do the Mariners view him as like an upgrade over Leo Rivas? I don't know. Maybe not. Rivas can play short, but you're about to get JP Crawford back here in the next few days, which means Dylan Moore is the backup shortstop. So not really that important to have Rivas, but if you think Rivas is better, and he's certainly swinging the bat better right now than Toro is, then maybe you don't do that. But we know that Jerry likes to circle back. We know that Toro is a guy that Jerry had chased for quite a while. So yeah, it's possible. I would say it's probably unlikely though. I think they probably look at their infield right now and they go, I mean, is he better than Rojas? Maybe. Although Rojas been on fire since he changed his walk-up music to Adele. So maybe not. Is he better than Dylan Moore? Maybe at the plate, but Moore obviously does things base running and defensive wise that Toro just can't do. So I'd say this, I'd rather have him on my roster than Dominic Canzone right now. But there's a lot of guys I'd rather have on my roster than Dom Canzone right now. So yeah, I don't know if there's actually going to be a roster spot for him, but yeah, I would obviously be very happy with bringing Abraham Toro back. I like him. I think that he's got some good, useful skills that maybe you can unlock. In Oakland, it looked like they had for the first 2 or 3 months of this season. It looks like they had found something there, but really struggled recently. So, ultimately the Mariners decide not to take him on. Fine, whatever. But yeah, I'm open to it. Like I said, I do think there's a spot on the bench for him. But my guess is that the Mariners are going to, they're going to send down either Rivas or Canzone when JP comes back. And then do they want to send down another guy for Abraham Toro? Maybe switch hitter, but maybe not. So we'll have to wait and see. But no, my guess would be like, no, they're not interested. But I would be. I think off the bench, there's a role for Abraham Toro.
I'm interested, and that interest is only based on memes and not any sort of practicality here. But They have the opportunity to do the funniest thing ever here.
I mean, he could clear, and then you just sign him to a minor league deal.
Sure.
If I don't think he can refuse an outright assignment, but maybe the A's just flat out release him. At that point, and then you can sign him to a minor league deal. I think that would be ideal. And then, give him a couple weeks in September, see how he looks, see if you can get the swing back, and then maybe call him up for that Houston series where he's destined to hit the division winning grand slam, probably off of Josh Hader. Totally likely. So yeah, we'll see. The Mariners are already going to have a little bit of a roster crunch. I'm using that term very loosely when they decide to call up JP, and then we'll see what they want to do. Like if it were me, I would call up JP. I would send down Canzone, and then when the roster's expanded, I would keep Canzone down there. And if I had Toro in my organization, easy decision. I just call up Toro. And
if not, then it's Bliss, it's Vavra, it's Arias. Yeah, it's one of those guys.
So yeah, you can make it work with Toro. My guess is that they don't want to try. So they're going to roll with Canzone. They're going to roll with Rivas. I mean, hard to blame him for rolling with Rivas. He's hitting right now. Canzone.
Yeah.
I wish him luck.
That sequence, because Canzone and Rivas were hitting back to back. Canzone, runner in scoring position, doesn't do anything with it. Rivas comes up, RBI. Right? Then that tells you everything you need to know about who they should keep and send down when JP's activated.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. Plus, they don't need the outfield presence. They really don't. They have Dylan Moore. They have Luke Raley. Like, they're fine. They're fine in the outfield. All right. That's going to do it for our show. But before we get out of here, a reminder that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Ty Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at @LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Tiding Gonzalez and Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. Now head on over to Locked On Seahawks to get all the latest on the Hawks before the season kicks off with Corbin Smith and the gang, and tell them Ty and Colby sent you. Obviously, the team cutting down to 53 players today. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you next time. Peace.